morning and welcome back to Rugged Mountain Homestead. My name is Sarah and today is such a cool and beautiful morning. We got a nice rain here last night that I figured this would be the perfect time for us to head down to the garden and see what's going on or what has changed and to have a little chat because I've learned quite a few things during the garden season this year. So let's go ahead and walk on down.
We have a new little tree. I believe this is an apple tree that was gifted to us. Good morning, chickens. You girls are getting so big. Yeah, usually I have treats, don't I? I don't have any treats this morning. No treats this morning. But you just ate breakfast. Still my happy place. As you can see, things have really changed since the last time we were down here. I got multiple heads on this gorgeous sunflower, and it's still coming out with a few more, but it seems like as fast as they came, they're gone. So pretty. And the bees have really enjoyed it. So, believe it or not, these are okra plants, and as you can see, here is an okra pod, but these plants are very small. The yarrow is getting ready to bloom. I am really happy about that. I have some cucumbers to pick while I'm down here this morning. Look at this beauty coming along. This is a loofah gourd. As is this one here. And the onions are doing great. They're starting to die back. As you can see, the tips and things are drying out, and some of them are starting to lay over. That is just an indication that their time in the ground is coming close to an end. Still need to come get some more parsley. I added some flowers, but look at these peppers. This is the Lakota squash plant we previously saw. There are some fruits on here that did not get pollinated, so they're just kind of shriveling on the vine. But look at this beauty. That is huge. Look at this beauty. And just so thick. Beautiful. We're still getting little bits off the collard greens. I just clipped these back the other night. We had some collard greens. New green beans popping up. Carrots are returning. And this is another Lakota squash. Very thick.
The Swiss chard continues to feed us, which makes me so happy. This has been so delicious, and I just cut this back along with the collard greens, and I'm just going to we're going to keep eating it and eating it as long as it'll give us food. This is the delicata squash. We have some real beauties on here too. You see what's missing? The green bean patch. But we do have someone new out here, and we'll talk more about that. But this is a wild asparagus plant. And there's 2 more planted over there. Delicata just keeps growing. This is a Dr. Witchy tomato plant. He has, believe it or not, 20 tomatoes on here right now, but look at them. This was the cluster basil. Let me tell you, this was the easiest way to grow it. This has been so beautiful and still continues to give me lots of basil. In case you're wondering, these are radishes. These are radish pods. I let several go to seed, and once these dry out, I'm going to, their seeds are inside there. They feel like peas. Once they dry out, I'm going to shell them basically and save them. Look at this thyme patch. This thyme patch is everything I hoped it would be, and is just producing beautifully. It smells so good. And then the lettuce here. And I don't know what happened to this little patch right there. And more green beans coming back up. Look at this pumpkin. It is truly amazing. I'm so excited. Such a pretty one. Perfect. More squash coming on.
the dill. I've gotten so many herbs out of here this year. Here's a smaller patch of oregano. Underneath the delicata squash is the biggest patch of oregano. It is just beautiful. Some irises that were gifted to me, along with some woolly lamb's ear and catmint. The catmint is really just adjusting nicely. Okay, found a relatively shady spot for the next little bit so that we can talk about the lessons I've learned. And you might say, well, Sarah, the garden's still in the throes of growing and thriving. And to a degree, it is. Our anticipated frost date this year is September 25. You never know. Last year we didn't get our first frost until early October. You just never know. But the lessons I learned. I've never gardened in this climate before. Granted, it's zone 6A, which kind of gives me some idea of when I can plant things. But it doesn't tell too much about the climate. So I figured, okay, if I get some short day varieties of tomatoes, that'll be fine. Well, I've been recently talking again to one of my gardening friends. I'm even reluctant to say gardening. It's just like she is a plant guru. And she told me, she says, Sarah, in this climate, she says, it just really, even with the early varieties, it's just not enough. Sorry, that was in my coffee. She says it's just not enough for the tomatoes to really come to full fruition, meaning to blush and turn red on the vine and be picked. She says around here, a lot of us that, if we grow tomatoes, we pick them green and let them turn red in the house, which I'm not even certain that these are going to be ready. They have definitely grown and thrived, so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the climate that they're in. And I said, I wish I knew that before I put 15 plants in the ground and took up this amount of space. It also made me relatively sad because we love garden fresh tomatoes. And I have been determined not to buy any fresh tomatoes, to wait for the ones out of the garden. So I asked her, I said, when we go to farmer's market, sometimes I do see tomatoes, not often, but sometimes I do. And she says, if you see red tomatoes during the summer at farmer's market, it's because they're grown in a greenhouse. Good information for next year. The peppers are doing well. I have peppers on the vine. I'm just not sure if they're going to have enough time either. So next year, I'm still going to grow a few tomatoes, not nearly as many. I'll probably only try 4. I will again do an early variety, and I will start them sooner in the house. It's just an experiment to see if that helps anything. The same with the peppers. I have some of them really loaded down, but I just don't know how big they're going to get before it's time. But then again, I still have a little over a month, so I'm not worried. It's just, I don't know, faced with the new information, I've just come to acceptance. Now, another important lesson learned was about the UV. The UV index here during the summer is extremely high. I know a lot of places will have like around a 9
Sometimes on really hot days, even a 10. A majority of the summer, every day here, it's an 11 or higher. So, the tomatoes were really starting to suffer. So we got a shade cloth, as you can see here, it's blue. And it was a real game changer for the tomatoes. I had a little patch of green beans. We did get a few beautiful rains this summer. And the sun, the UV, after that rain just burnt them to a crisp. I mean, it was sad. So if I'm going to grow spring, summer green beans, then I need to have them under a shade cloth. But I might even, I don't know, I might wait till later in the summer to plant them. I replanted, and I'm just waiting to see if there's going to be enough time. I was talking to her about, I was like, well, what about a fall garden? You plant it in, you know, mid-summer for some of these. And I even saw in the Farmer's Almanac where it said in this area, in my zip code, that I could plant a few things in late summer. And she was just like, it's always a toss-up. So a lot of things that what you read are nothing like what you experience. So the things that have done really well here this year are squash. Oh, it's been wonderful. All the greens have produced a lot. All my herbs have been just fantastic. But I planted a majority of tomatoes and peppers, just because it'd been so long since I'd had Garden Fresh that I was really wanting a lot of those. Granted, did I have visions of coming down here with 5-gallon buckets and filling them up with tomatoes and peppers and making salsa till it came out of our ears? Yes, I did, and that did not happen. And for a while I thought, is this me? Did I do something wrong? You know, what's going on here? And obviously the plants are beautiful, but it wasn't me. It was just my lack of knowledge in that area. So the carrots are still doing wonderful. They look horrible. The tops, like of one row, are just perfectly fine. I have pulled up about 30 that were sweet and good, and just not, they weren't real big when I pulled them up. I pulled them up kind of as a test, and I thought that they need to be thinned down again. So they're still growing in there as root vegetables, just the tops with the sun, the scorching heat we had for several days, and then the rain, it just looks awful. But as long as they're still growing, you know, what we're going to eat is in the ground. So I'm real excited about that. The onions have done beautifully. I've picked a couple, and they've been wonderful. And I didn't plant enough for like any type of storage. I only planted 28 because I'd never done it before. Well, lesson learned. Onions do great here. That's one of the things she said. Potatoes, onions, and carrots do beautifully here. We eat a lot of all of those. So next year I'm going to dedicate one whole bed, the 5x24 bed, to nothing but potatoes, onions, and carrots. And see how much I get. And then, you know, if it's really successful, then I will expand them to a larger bed. The squash does great. Her cabbage and broccoli was beautiful. And I asked her, I was like, how do you get cabbage and broccoli to grow in the heat of the summer and not bolt? And she said the shade cloth was enough to do it. I'll try it. And then I'll try it later in the year as well, so we'll just see. I'm hoping that the greens stick around all the way through frost, because they can tolerate a frost. They've been delicious. So we've been really blessed with those things. Compared to last year, this is just glorious. You know, this garden has provided me such a sense of happiness and peace and joy and just all the things, inspiration for next year. I'm already plotting out next year's garden. I realized early on in the season I needed more flowers. Even though I have some flowers here, they've taken a lot longer to bloom. I've only had one bloom so far, and the others are heading up, but it's crazy to me because I put the seed in the ground in June, but I know they take 75 days, and I figured, well, 75 days, but you don't count for, some cloudy days or, cooler nights or just all the different variables. So it's not just putting a seed in the ground and waiting 75 days. It just doesn't work like that. I can't forget my cucumbers. So it's been like this. Can't complain because it is food. And this is probably going to make me a quart of refrigerator pickles, or we can eat them fresh, eat 1 or 2 fresh and just make a pint. We'll just see. So when visiting with my friend, I did not realize that things like asparagus grow wild here. Apples do really, really well here. And she has cultivated her property for years, and it is just an oasis. So when visiting over there, she gifted us with an apple tree and some other little tree. I'm not sure, I forget what it is, she told me. But those types of trees around here, you can purchase them, and their apple trees are pretty expensive, even though they do wonderful here. Colorado was known for its apples long before it was Washington State. I did not know asparagus grew wild here, and she has a wild asparagus plant in one of her beds, and so she shared 2 roots with me and a plant, of course, with roots. And so usually an asparagus bed will take you 2 years to get established. So with these roots, I'm hoping maybe it'll just take 1 year. I'll just have to see, but we love asparagus. So lesson learned, I'm going to plant more things like more greens, more carrots, potatoes, onions. Next year I'm going to do several broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower plants under shade cloth. Same as green beans and squash, but just fewer tomatoes, fewer peppers. They probably need the heat. Well, we have plenty of heat here. They probably just need the longer season, like further south in New Mexico. So I guess I will get my peppers like that from now on. But these squash, I just keep looking at this Lakota squash, and it is just amazing. I don't know if it does it justice on camera to see how large it is, but it's just gorgeous. It's starting to turn and stripe. That is the garden update, and so planning for next year. Not complaining about this year because like I said, I'm getting lots of herbs and squashes and things. I did envision that my arbor would be completely covered all the way up, and it's not, but it's still very beautiful. I'm also going to plant peas on the tomato trellis in the spring, in the early spring. I put some in here and they've popped up, but it's going to be hard with the tomatoes here. But I wanted to see how far they would come into fruition. I needed this year, and it has been a wonderful blessing. I may not have gotten the gallons and gallons of food but we did get right plenty of several things.
Yep, she's the leader. Not too much longer we'll be getting eggs, for a little while before winter sets in. As you can see, we put on a shade cloth for the chickens as well. Dean finished a little walkway here. Underneath these crusher fines is more wire, and it sticks out to almost the width of this path. So we're feeling pretty confident. Never going to get too confident, but... And then he put the plexiglass on this window here. So it comes down at night and has a lock there.
And then he did something similar over here. We have shutters.
And they come closed at night, both sides. It's the same thing. I'm just not going to do both.
I always love coming out here and seeing these chickens run to greet me, or just out here when they don't know that I'm looking, when we come in from errands or anything. It's just so heartwarming to see and to hear them. Now, as for the Every Bit Counts challenge, I am preserving every day. The thing is, I've realized this summer with filming, is that, you know, since I have had those variables in the garden, it's not something different every day. And nobody wants to see the same thing over and over again. But the things that I do differently, I will continue to film. Like last night, I have 9 half-pint jars of raspberry jam. I did that, and they were with frozen raspberries that I had in the freezer that I had to deal with because we have ordered a half beef, which will be coming in November. So I just definitely want to make sure I have all the room possible in the freezer, and some of it will be canned, but of course not until that time. So I will be bringing forth a video on that because some people are really interested in canning meat and haven't done it before or seen it before. So like I said, here are the 9 half pints. I didn't film the whole process because it really is just a very straightforward process that most people probably already know, and it's a long one. I do mine with sugar on the stove and let it heat and heat until it sheets on the spoon, and then I go ahead and I put it into hot jars. But the point is that I've preserved it, and I'm going to add it on with the other things that I have done. Now, I still continue to get tons of herbs, but I think the next one that I'm thinking about doing is when I make tea, when I actually make the blend. Also, what I learned about the Every Bit Counts challenge is that I was like, you know, I'm really not doing anything much differently than I normally do, other than it's every day instead of like 3 things in one day, and then, you know, not do anything for 2 days, you know, and just, you can't help the way that it comes in. But at the same time, it's like, well, we don't let food go to waste anyway. And I still do a lot of preserving in the winter because, like, if I make a big pot of soup, you know, we don't eat it all that night or the next day for leftovers. I can it, and then that way we have it later on. So I still do a lot of canning. I've realized that the canning marathons are good for me. They're okay. Because when I do get a large amount of produce in, and it just takes me several days to go through it, or a week, then, you know, I may be done for a month. So that works okay for me. I understand that people that have small kids at home, that it may be easier for them just to spend an hour every day. I have felt more pushed doing an hour, well, not an hour, but doing a little bit every day rather than doing it as it becomes available. It's like, okay, what am I going to do today? Even though you have a little bit of something, it's like I said, it may be, you know, processing herbs, you know, 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row. Nobody wants to see that 3 days in a row. So I might just go back to doing my canning marathons and just the way that I've always done it. But I'll get through this month. It was a lot of things I learned about myself, so, and how I do things, and realizing that I like my process. So thank you for joining me up here on Rugged Mountain Homestead on this beautiful morning. I've so enjoyed walking in the garden with you, talking about the lessons learned, showing off the chickens and how fast they're growing, and how much I'm looking forward to those first eggs. We always appreciate when you stop by for a visit. We look forward to seeing you next time, and until then, take care.